An old man riding a rusty motorcycle gets pulled over by police, but within minutes military Humvees arrive, soldiers step out, and a captain salutes him in front of a shocked crowd. Who is this man? Why are dozens of soldiers defending him? What begins as a simple traffic stop turns into a moment that will change everyone's lives forever. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us grow. And let us know in the comments where, in the world you're watching from. Make sure to watch this video till the end, because in the final moments you'll see the journey from an entirely new perspective. Now, let's jump into the story. The morning sun was just starting to warm the quiet road that led out of Ridgeway, a small town where not much ever happened. Until today, Officer Lena Brooks sat in the front seat of her patrol car, tapping her fingers on the steering wheel, eyes watching the horizon. She was 29, sharp-minded, serious, and always on time. A rising officer in a department that liked things neat and tidy. Her partner Jared was in the passenger seat, sipping lukewarm coffee and trying not to look too sleepy. That's when they saw him. An old man on an even older motorcycle rolled slowly past the stop sign near the gas station. The bike was loud, with a deep growl that echoed off the empty storefronts. His jacket was brown leather, cracked with age but clearly cared for. His silver hair stuck out from under a faded black helmet. Jared chuckled. That guy's got style, but should he even be riding? Lena narrowed her eyes. That bike doesn't look safe, and he's got to be, in his 80s? Easily, Jared agreed. The patrol lights flashed as Lena pulled out behind the motorcycle. The old man pulled over without hesitation, stopping neatly along the curb. He didn't rush. He just sat there, both feet on the ground, hands resting calmly on the handlebars, waiting. Lena stepped out and approached slowly, her mirrored sunglasses reflecting the man's calm expression. She spoke clearly, her voice firm and official. Sir, please shut off the engine and step off the motorcycle. The man didn't move. His eyes stayed forward, watching the hills in the distance like he was waiting for something more important than this moment. Sir? She repeated, a little louder this time. Finally, he turned his head, nodded once, and switched off the engine. The sudden silence made the tension feel heavier. He still didn't speak. Jared joined her. Morning, sir. We just need to see your license and registration. The man reached into his jacket slowly, pulled out a worn brown wallet and handed over the documents without a word. His hands were steady. Everything inside was perfectly organized. Lena glanced at the license. Her eyebrows rose. 81, she whispered to Jared. Jared gave a soft whistle. Wow. Lena looked at the man again. Sir, do you live around here? He nodded once, his eyes still calm. Out by the edge of the valley. Alone? Yes. She hesitated. Are you aware that riding a motorcycle at your age can be risky? He didn't answer. He just looked back at the hills. Sir, I asked if you... I heard you, he said gently. His voice was deep but kind. No anger, no fear. Jared tilted his head. You doing okay today, sir? The man nodded again. I'm fine. But Lena wasn't convinced. She wasn't used to silence. People either argued or obeyed. This man did neither. He was just still. She stepped back and lowered her voice to Jared. Something's off. He could be confused, maybe not fit to drive. I think we should have him evaluated. Jared looked unsure. He seems okay to me. Just quiet. By now, a few people had stopped to watch. A woman with grocery bags. A teenager with his phone already recording. The crowd grew, whispering as the officers continued questioning the old man. He's not even arguing, someone said. He looks lost, said another. He's not doing anything wrong, someone else added. Lena turned back. Sir, I'm going to ask again, do you have family nearby, anyone to call? The man didn't answer. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. I've taken care of myself for a long time. His words hung in the air like smoke. He didn't sound confused. He sounded like someone who had seen a lot, more than most. Jared scratched his head. Lena, maybe we should just... No, Lena interrupted. He needs to come with us. This could be a safety issue. Safety for who? The man asked quietly. Lena stepped forward, tension rising in her shoulders. You may be a risk to yourself or others. We need to check. Sir, please get in the vehicle. The old man didn't move. He looked at her the way a teacher might look at a student who had asked the wrong question. Calm but knowing. I'm not going anywhere, he said softly. Now the air was thick with silence. The crowd had grown to nearly a dozen. Cameras were out. People whispered, some angry, some concerned. From across the street inside the diner, Martha Reese wiped her hands on her apron and stepped outside. Her eyes locked on the man sitting on the motorcycle. Walter? She whispered. She knew. Him. Everyone did. He'd come in for coffee every Thursday. Always polite. Always alone. And then it clicked. She turned and rushed back inside. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed the phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. Captain Monroe? She said. It's Martha. I need your help. It's urgent. It's Walter. They've stopped him and they don't know who he is. Back on the street, Lena took one last step forward. Sir, this is your final warning. Walter Grant sat still, calm as a mountain. And somewhere far away, engines began to roar. Martha Reese moved quickly behind the counter of her small diner, her fingers trembling slightly as she picked up the old rotary phone. She hadn't made a call like this in years, but some names you never forget, especially when they once saved your life. She dialed the number from memory. Fort Hamilton Base front desk, came the voice on the other end. This is Martha Reese from Ridgeway. I need to speak with Captain Elijah Monroe. It's about a man named Walter Grant. There was a pause. You said, Walter Grant? Yes, please. It's urgent. One moment. Across town, the tension outside the gas station was growing. Officer Lena Brooks now stood directly in front of Walter, frustration tightening her jaw. She didn't understand why this man was so calm, why he wouldn't listen, why he didn't seem afraid. Most people would be nervous by now, especially with a patrol car behind them and a crowd forming. Walter simply sat there, hands folded, over the handlebars like he had nowhere better to be and no reason to explain himself. Sir, I'm not going to ask again, Lena said. Walter didn't answer. Jared looked uneasy. He stepped back, scratching at the back of his neck. Lena, are we really doing this? I mean, he hasn't done anything illegal. He pulled over when we asked, gave us his license, didn't argue. He's being non-compliant, Lena replied, though her voice had less certainty now. The crowd murmured louder. A woman shouted, he hasn't done anything wrong. A teen added, this is messed up, leave the old guy alone. Lena's eyes flicked to the crowd. Phones were recording. The moment was shifting. She could feel it, but she didn't know how to stop it. Back at Fort Hamilton, Captain Elijah Monroe stepped into his office, holding the phone to his ear. He was 54, tall, steady, with eyes that had seen war but still carried kindness. When he heard the name Walter Grant, he stopped cold. Martha, he said. Did you say Walter Grant? From Ridgeway? Yes. He's being held by 2 city officers. They're saying he's not fit to ride. They don't know who he is. Elijah straightened. Stay on the line. Keep your eyes on him. Do not let them take him anywhere. I'll handle this. 15 minutes later, wheels hit the pavement hard. 12 military vehicles tore down Highway 9, dust flying into the air. Soldiers sat tall in their seats, serious, alert. These weren't ordinary troops. They were veterans, instructors, and support unit members, most of whom had been trained by the very man they were now going to defend. At the front of the convoy was a black SUV with Captain Elijah at the wheel. He hadn't felt this focused in years. Back at the gas station, the situation was heating up. Lena finally reached for her radio. Dispatch, we may need assistance at Ridgeway and 3rd. Possible non-compliance situation. Jared looked at her, eyebrows raised. You really want to bring more heat to this? He's not responding. He could be a danger to himself. Suddenly a low, distant rumble rolled through the streets. Jared turned his head. "You hear that?" The crowd grew quiet. The rumble grew louder. It sounded like thunder, steady, powerful, and closing in fast. Lena took a few steps toward the road, her eyes narrowing. Then the first Humvee appeared around the corner. Behind it came another and another. One by one, military vehicles rolled onto the street, forming a wide arc around the patrol car, the motorcycle, and the crowd. They came to a halt with precise, almost practiced discipline. Lena and Jared stared in disbelief. The crowd gasped. 50 soldiers stepped out of the vehicles, boots hitting the pavement in near-perfect unison. They wore service uniforms, their expressions unreadable. Then, from the black SUV, Captain Elijah Monroe emerged. He didn't run. He walked, calm, tall, every step purposeful. He approached Walter, stopped 3 feet away, and raised his hand in a clean, sharp salute. "Sir," he said, voice clear and steady. "Colonel Walter Grant. We came as soon as we heard." Gasps broke out from the crowd. Lena's jaw dropped. "Colonel?" she said under her breath. Walter gave the slightest nod. "Good to see you, Captain." Captain Elijah turned slowly toward Lena and Jared. "Who stopped Colonel Grant?" he asked, not angrily, but with authority that filled the entire street. Lena raised her hand, stunned. We did. Officer Lena Brooks, City Patrol. You're aware you stopped a man who served 4 decades in multiple humanitarian and combat missions, who trained hundreds of men, including me." Lena's mouth opened, but no words came. Walter sat calmly, just as before. Elijah continued, his voice firm. "You saw an old man on an old motorcycle. You assumed things, and you were wrong." The soldiers behind him took one synchronized step forward. The street fell completely silent. Even the wind paused to listen. Elijah took one step closer to Lena. "This man you disrespected spent a lifetime protecting people like you." Lena swallowed hard. Her voice was quiet now. "I didn't. No." Elijah shook his head. "You didn't ask." Walter finally spoke. Just one sentence. "Sometimes silence has more to say than shouting ever will." He turned the key in his motorcycle. The engine roared to life, steady and proud. The soldiers stepped aside, forming a line of honor. Walter nodded once to Elijah, then began to ride through. No one dared speak. Even the crowd stood still. As the last of the dust settled, Officer Lena Brooks stared at the empty road and realized she hadn't just stopped a man. She had interrupted a legend. The dust hadn't even settled when Officer Lena Brooks took a shaky step backward. Her heart pounded in her chest, though she wasn't sure if it was from shock, embarrassment, or the weight of 50 soldiers standing in perfect silence. The man she had nearly taken in for a mental health evaluation had just been called colonel by a U.S. Army captain. And not just any colonel, but someone who clearly held the respect of every soldier in the convoy. Captain Elijah Monroe turned toward the gathered crowd. His voice was calm but carried a quiet strength. "Let me tell you who you almost arrested." He paused, letting the silence settle. "This man, Colonel Walter Grant, served for over 40 years in the United States Army. He led search and rescue missions in flood zones, war zones, and disaster zones around the world. He coordinated relief efforts in 3 continents. He never sought fame. He just did his duty." The people around the gas station listened, eyes wide, phones now lowered. He trained thousands of soldiers. Some are now commanders, some retired, and some didn't make it home. But every single one of them respected him, not because of medals, but because of how he carried himself. Elijah looked over at Walter, still seated on his motorcycle, calm as ever. He earned 2 silver stars, 1 bronze, 3 purple hearts, and never once bragged about them. You know what he always said? The captain glanced back at the crowd. "It's not about how loud you speak, it's about how well you listen." Lena lowered her eyes. She felt the weight of her mistake pressing on her shoulders like armor that no longer fit. She hadn't meant harm, but that didn't change what she had done. Walter, still calm, finally spoke again. "I wasn't trying to make a point. I was just going to the hardware store. My tractor broke down yesterday. Needed a new hydraulic valve. There was something so ordinary about his words, it made them powerful. Jared shifted uncomfortably beside Lena. Sir, Colonel Grant, we didn't know. Walter gave a small shrug. Most people don't. They look at the outside and think they've seen enough. Captain Elijah nodded. That's why we're here. Not to punish anyone, but to remind people that every person on the street carries a story. Some are just harder to see. He turned to Lena. What you did wasn't evil. It was a mistake. But how you respond to it, that's what matters now. Lena's voice was barely above a whisper. I made the wrong call. I judged without understanding. I'm sorry, sir. Walter met her eyes for the first time since the stop began. It takes courage to admit that. Thank you. The tension in the air slowly softened. People in the crowd exchanged looks, not of anger anymore, but of quiet reflection. Captain Elijah stepped closer to Lena. You have a tough job, but maybe it's time for your department to see what it really means to serve. Lena blinked. What do you mean? I'll be speaking with your department head, Elijah replied. We're inviting all local officers to Fort Hamilton. A week of training, not on tactics, but on understanding, on respect. You'll meet veterans, learn their stories, see the strength that doesn't show in age or uniforms. Lena nodded slowly. I'd like that. Walter gave the faintest smile. That's a good start. Jared stepped forward. Sir, I'm sorry too. I should have said something earlier. Walter chuckled softly. The day you stop learning is the day you stop living. You've both got time. One by one, the soldiers saluted and stepped back into their vehicles. The convoy started to move again, slowly, respectfully, until they were gone. The street was quiet. The crowd began to leave, talking in softer tones. The story would spread, of course, the videos would go viral. But what mattered most had happened right here in real time, not on camera but in hearts. Walter looked down at his motorcycle, brushed a bit of dust from the handlebars. Still, ride's better than anything new, he muttered. Lena smiled a little. It's a beautiful machine. He gave her a knowing look. And I've still got roads to travel. She nodded. We all do. As Walter started the engine, its deep rumble echoed once again. He turned slowly onto the road, riding off with a quiet dignity no words could fully capture. Back at the precinct later that afternoon, Lena sat at her desk, staring at the department email announcing the new joint training program with Fort Hamilton. It would start in 1 week. She read it twice. Then she reached into her drawer, pulled out her notepad, and wrote down 2 words in bold letters at the top. Look deeper. The hills outside Ridgeway were quiet, painted in soft gold by the afternoon sun. A gentle breeze rustled the wild grass near the fences, and the sound of birds drifted through the open air. On a small farm tucked just past Highway 9, Walter Grant was lying under his tractor with a wrench in one hand and grease on both elbows. He moved slowly but with purpose. Every bolt he turned, every part he touched, he knew them all. It wasn't just a machine. It was a piece of his life, his land, his work, his peace. Parked under the shade of an old tree nearby, the same rumbling. Motorcycle sat still and silent. Its chrome glinted in the light. It had been with Walter for more than 40 years, never the fastest or flashiest, but reliable, steady, and strong, just like him. The sound of tires crunching on gravel broke the silence. Walter slid out from under the tractor, wiping his hands on an old rag. A patrol car was pulling up his driveway. He narrowed his eyes and watched as the door opened and a familiar figure stepped out. Officer Lena Brooks. She was wearing her uniform, but something about her looked different this time. Less guarded, more thoughtful. She stood beside the car, for a moment took a deep breath and began walking toward him. Walter raised an eyebrow. Back to arrest me for changing oil without a permit? Lena smiled just a little. No, sir, I just came to talk. If that's all right with you. He nodded toward the porch. Coffee's still hot. Cups are clean enough. Inside the small farmhouse, the kitchen was simple but welcoming. An old wooden table sat in the center with 2 blue ceramic mugs waiting nearby. Walter poured coffee, black and strong, and slid 1 mug across to Lena. She took a sip, then looked around at the photos on the wall. Most were black and white military units, a much younger Walter standing with other soldiers, some smiling, some serious. You never told anyone, she said. Told them what? Who you were, what you'd done. Walter leaned back in his chair. No one asks. Most folks just see the wrinkles and the rust and think they've seen everything. Lena looked down into her cup. I owe you more than an apology. Walter waited. I judged you. I assumed things. I made you feel like you were just a problem to fix or remove. And that's not the officer I wanted to be when I joined. Walter nodded slowly. So, why did you become one? Lena thought for a moment. Because I wanted to help people. I wanted to make a difference, keep the streets safe. And you think safety always comes from control? Walter asked gently. She paused. No, not anymore. Sometimes it starts with listening. He smiled, just a bit. Now you're getting somewhere. She glanced out the window at the motorcycle under the tree. It still runs? Better than most people expect. It's been through dust storms, mountain roads, even a hurricane once. Not the prettiest thing on wheels, but it gets where it needs to go. Lena chuckled softly. Kind of like its rider. Walter sipped his coffee. Age doesn't erase who you are. It just hides the shine under a little rust. There was a long, peaceful silence. Then Lena spoke again. We're starting that program you talked about with Fort Hamilton next week. I'll be there. Walter gave a small nod of approval. Good. You'll learn a lot. And not just about us. About people. Lena reached into her jacket pocket and took out a folded piece of paper. She laid it on the table. I wrote something down. After that day, a reminder to myself. Walter opened it and read the words. Look deeper. He nodded. That's all it takes. Sometimes. Lena stood, leaving her mug half full. I should go, but thank you for the coffee and for the lesson. Walter stood with her. You're welcome. Keep your eyes open out there. You'll see more than you expect. As she walked back to the patrol car, Lena paused to glance once more at the bike. It wasn't shiny or modern, but it looked like it belonged. Like it still had places to go. Just like Walter. Just like all of us. She drove off down the dirt road, the sun low behind her, casting long shadows across the land. And in the distance, back at the farmhouse, the sound of a motorcycle engine rolled once more through the hills, not fading into the past, but moving forward,